And we're live.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yes,
All
looking forward to
right.
today's topic, all about executive assistants. It
There
makes
you
me
go.
sound like an executive, which also already sounds thrusting and
Let's be
exciting.
executives.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Going to be a good topic. If you're joining us live, say a little hello. Leave a comment below the video wherever you're watching. We're going to have a great conversation today. We'd love to weave in your questions or comments as well. Happy to pop your name up on the screen and answer anything that might be top of mind for you. And we'll go from there. So, as is our custom, we'll start in just a minute or two. Hopefully, there's a beautiful Sunday afternoon happening in London right now. There, Michael, enjoying the day.
Yeah,
Tell us about Sunday. Has it been nice?
Sunday hasn't been nice. It's been cold and it's been grey, but it hasn't been raining. So in London, I guess that counts as a good weather. But my wife was just saying that, frankly, and she's lived in Britain her whole life, but complaining about the weather being horrible for 2 months of the year. Around this time of year. So
Yeah,
even though we're used to it, we don't necessarily love it. And
yeah.
I guess Seattle is not particularly warm and sunny at this time of year either.
No, it's miserable.
That's
We
very British of
survive.
you to kick off with the weather. That's a very British conversation opener. If
I'm
you're just
88% British Islander, according
that's
to my
funny.
23andMe score. So
That's funny. Yeah, well, that's a very British habit. Yeah, the next thing you'll be wearing bowler hats and saying "Good, good."
I don't know about that. Well,
Well,
fun
look,
times, fun times.
yeah,
Great
just look at
topic.
yeah.
Should we jump into this thing today? You ready to
Let's
do
do
this?
this. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kicking off, right? Just to double check.
Yeah, let me do that.
Okay,
Here we go.
wonderful.
I'm part of one of those expensive masterminds, and all the people in it make more money than I do. And one of the things I was surprised about was the fact that they all talk about the role of their executive assistant in their life and how they work together with that person. And it's a central part of how they operate. I was sort of surprised by that. And so, in today's conversation, we are going to have a deep dive into the issues of hiring an executive assistant, working with an executive assistant, the wisdom of it, and how to use it to defend your time and expand your productivity. So, Michael, are you ready to jump into this fun topic?
Yeah, we've not talked about this before, although actually I've
No.
had a VA of some kind of partly executive assistant for about 2.5, 3 years now. So this is something I can speak to a certain degree from experience, although there'll be interesting nuances to talk about what is an executive assistant. But why is this a focus for you now? Apart from you seeing a bunch of people making more money than you do, and they all doing something that's a very powerful sort of peer pressure kind of thing, isn't it? But what is there a more particular reason why you're focused on this now?
Well, yeah, I guess it was not so much peer pressure in my mind is that modeling, and they always say, if you're the smartest guy in the room you're in the wrong room. And part of joining that mastermind group this last year, it's a strategic coach. It's Dan Sullivan is the guy behind it. Great program. Many top, internet entrepreneurs are part of it. And it was fun to join, and it's been interesting to be a part of it. And so I'm trying to understand how other people have scaled and done successful, growth of their businesses. And so I'm listening for the cues and the topics. Now, this hasn't been a topic in that group, formally. It hasn't been an agenda item of the presentations or conversations. I've just heard people making reference to the use of their executive assistants, and it did pique my interest. So as I went into 2022, I thought to myself, what can I do to change the game? We've seen tremendous growth in our business this last year and in our charity, and we that it's awesome to see that happening, but I'm stretched for time, and I'm trying to figure out how do I get better at time management? How do I get better at um, being more productive and to make sure that I don't start to miss things? And so, for both the business and for the charity, I think it's wise for me to find and work with an executive assistant, which is something I've never done before. It's always, to be honest, felt like a luxury. Maybe something like a little bit of, the executives have the executive assistant and they do all the traveling and speaking. And who am I to have such a helper in my life? And so it's felt a little bit, I guess maybe I have issues there. I don't know, but it's felt a little bit like a luxury or something. And so never gone down that path before. And so there you have it. That's kind of the thinking behind it.
Yeah, interesting. I guess it sounds like this is about the fact that it's a subset of time management, first of all. So you said productivity and not missing things. So there's sort of carrot and stick reasons for it, right? Productivity
Hmm.
increased, more output, feel good. Missing stuff, feel bad. Good reasons to get one as well. So I guess it's kind of a subset of what we were discussing last time, wasn't it? Because we were talking about time management and
Hmm.
protecting your time. And I guess this comes in focus on the system, which is one of the things we talked about, isn't it? Growing a system so that we can take ourselves out of day-to-day operations, and also maybe a little bit, depending on how the quality of the person you hire, eliminating your involvement in decisions. And I certainly, that's something I'm busy trying to work on with my assistant right now, is to get myself out of day-to-day micro decisions. So let's plunge into this. I mean, the first thing I guess we've got to do is define our terms.
Yeah.
What do you mean by executive assistant? Is that the same as virtual assistant? Is that different from personal assistant? How are you seeing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I'm thinking through the specific duties, I guess. Whether it would be called a personal assistant or an executive assistant, I guess, is debatable. Um, the question about whether they're local or abroad, I guess, was the first thing I started to think about. And so I'd be interested in your point of view on the difference, if there is one, between personal assistant and executive assistant, or is it just semantics? And But I guess we could talk through kind of the duties and responsibilities. And then I'd also be interested in your point of view on virtual, kind of remote international versus local to you. My thinking is, I'm going to be looking for someone who's based in the Philippines, and we'll be working obviously remotely, virtually in essence. What's your take on it? How do you define those terms and ideas?
Well, so first of all, I think, as you were saying, you need to define specific duties. And I think that's one of the keys, as we've talked about this before when hiring, but this is quite specific, isn't it? Often people think of an executive assistant as your first hire because they're going to help you personally. And if you're a solopreneur, that kind of makes sense. Now, obviously, that's not your situation because you have some quite big teams in place already. But I would say it's good to differentiate not so much between location versus the role, because I think the role itself is the one that people mess up the most. I can certainly talk about location, and I've got executive, well, sort of virtual assistant who does some executive type stuff in the Philippines. So that's the only thing I'm familiar with. I haven't had a VA or a PA or an executive assistant in the UK. I guess in an ideal world I would do, but that's probably not affordable for me. Um, I would say the most important thing is to define the fact that an executive assistant or personal assistant, I think, is similar, except executive sounds grander because it implies that you're the executive, right? But apart from that, semantics, I do think there's a difference between that and a general virtual assistant. A general virtual assistant for me is somebody who plugs into my business and may or may not help me with my personal tasks, which is more or less what I have with my guy who does that, and some marketing stuff and some journal stuff, including a little bit of personal assistant stuff. Whereas I think a personal or executive assistant is there to help you personally manage your diary and in short, not miss things and be more productive, to your points. So I think there's a bit of a subtle difference between a PA or a
Okay.
VA, sorry, executive assistant versus a general virtual assistant, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I see it as, if you're a kitchen table entrepreneur, e-commerce operator, or whatever, and you hire someone for the first time, you would
Mm.
call them your virtual assistant. And they
Hmm.
maybe they do, they're jack of all trades, master of none. They do anything you
Yeah.
can hand off to them elegantly. So I guess that's the difference between the role I'm in, where I have executive teams actually and senior partners in both a corporation and in a charity. And so I'm not in a situation where I'm solopreneur. So I guess it would be more a personal assistant or an executive assistant. Yeah, I think that's the demarcation that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you about your plan and what do you hope to be the
Mhm.
outcome? I mean, first of all, what do you hope to be the outcome? Let's define that a bit more. You were saying more productivity, less missing things, but let's dig into that.
Yeah, thanks. This is like a therapy session. I love it.
Tell
You're
me
being
more
my
about your
executive
mother.
coach right now. It's so great. It's awesome. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
That's exactly. I was just asking, really, what is it you're trying to achieve?
Yeah. Well, so I think there's uh, two or three top of mind tasks that came to my mind when I started to think about this. The first one is inbox. I currently have, at the moment, I'll tell you the exact number, 78,528 messages in my one email inbox. My second email inbox, I have 7,569 emails. So that one's not as bad at all. And those are just my two primary emails that I use. So that's one thing. The other thing is calendaring and scheduling, and making sure that I'm optimized in terms of my calendar. The third thing would be travel. We have a growing slate of trips scheduled for 2022 as we come out of COVID, and we think we have opportunity to travel both domestically and abroad. I want that to be a primary focus. And then I would say the fourth thing is sort of a nuanced thing, but it's sort of unique to our business, I guess. But many, I guess, business owners would have this situation, and that is relationships, cultivating relationships, and staying in touch with clients and former clients, prospective clients, that whole type of thing. So, in essence, because of the consultancy that we run as part of our business, making sure that people feel connected and that they're reminded of who we are, what we do, what we can do for them, and we're blessing them with, gifts and books that might make sense, that kind of thing. You know what I mean. So that kind of outreach program to prospective or former clients, that type of work. I think I've just felt like there's value there that I just don't have the time to do it. But I know it's nice. It's nice when that happens to me, when my, CPA sends me something, or when, I get another box of books from Strategic Coach, that kind of thing. And I see those models and I say to myself, there's wisdom there. It just takes time and effort to sort out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I can speak to a couple of those. I've got I would guess, in Amazing FBA. So I guess I'm basically in that business of solopreneur. They have sort of halo of people around it, but full time got a general virtual assistant slash content marketing assistant. But actually, he does perform a couple of those roles. I can tell you that the inbox management is something I've been really pushing him hard on recently, and there's something like 2/3 of messages that can be dealt with by him pretty much within the next while. Sorry about the camera issue. I don't know what's going on with my phone.
No worries. There you go.
I'm
There
back.
you go.
So let's do that again. For my talking of people who are doing content marketing, Jai, who was one of my assistants before, will be editing this. So let's do that again. The the inbox triage thing is really big because I find emails soak up a lot of my time and just kind of annoy me and are sort of very distracting because they don't relate to a particular topic. So they're kind of my least favorite task. And so I'm really pushing my VA at the moment to get them off my plate. And it's quite
Yeah.
tricky because
Yeah.
it depends on the nature of your business or charity in your case. But actually, you can find there are like 30 different subtypes of tasks, or 40 or 50. And I've really tried to chunk it into bits and gradually train him, sort of going through it week by week with him to sort of tease those into categories, to come up with SOPs, and how also to try and develop his common sense, which is where I think an executive assistant needs to have more more understanding than
Mm.
merely a VA, and that develops over time. So I'm saying to him, look, I want us to get to the point in 2 months' time where you make the decisions, and there are going to be some mistakes made, but that saves me enough time for me to be able to help,
Yeah.
put up with that. So that's really worthwhile, I think, and I've already seen the benefit of that. So it's definitely worthwhile.
No, I think that's a huge one for me. I this last year, I would say that was one of my weaknesses. I've had important emails go unseen,
Yeah.
and then I've seen a ton of junk.
Yeah.
I'm
78,000
seeing the
messages.
wrong thing and not seeing the important,
Yeah,
important
when
thing.
you
So
said that number, I mean, wow, I definitely think you need to hire somebody and focus them on your inbox for a while. So yeah, that's quite a scary number. The other thing I would say is
yeah,
that I don't know if it's unique to you cultivating relationships. I mean, it's not quite the same thing as client relationships, which I keep intending to send out books to my best clients, and I don't get around to it. So I hear you on that one. But also, we do have a pretty good way now of keeping in touch with guests for the podcast and prospective guests, which is a similar task.
hmm
Um, so I would also say that's great value in that because it does save a lot of time, and there's nothing you can't outsource about most of that stuff. So okay, that's what you're wanting to achieve. What's your actual plan to actually, get this wonderful person that's going to sort through 78,000 emails in their first week?
yeah, right, exactly. So I've already started to look on onlinejobs.ph. I have a team leader for our Philippines-based team, and that she's amazing, and she's helped do the recruiting process previously for team members that we've added through kind of managing that process of online jobs ph, the job posting, the screen of resumes, and then the setup of the interview. So she sort of served as a recruiter in that role, if you will. And so I'm going to kick things off with her I already started to just look, and of course, there are just tons and tons of people with great backgrounds, ready, willing, and able to work in an executive assistant or personal assistant role on onlinejobs.ph. I think it's the go-to place if that's going to be the approach. And just, at first glance, I'm like, okay, there's obviously just, a huge number of prospective candidates here. And I think we'll kick that off. Our process generally has been that we kick it off. She reviews all the resumes and narrows it down to like 3 people for interviews. Then she does a first pass interview, and then I would do, the interview second pass of the interview, and then we make the final decision. So that's the one part. I'm also just researching how best to do this. You piqued my interest when you just said that you have sort of a 30 types of emails in your inbox that could be triaged by, a personal assistant. I'm going to have to ask you to lend me that Excel chart or whatever you have, and tap the wisdom of the crowd here in terms of how best to do this. You can Google around and see what executive assistants are, their top roles and duties are. And we've got that. I also looked at a Harvard Business Review article just asking the question, is an executive assistant really a productivity hack? Is it actually beneficial, or is it like, just gone the way of the dinosaur or whatever because it's not really beneficial? As it happens, it hasn't gone the way of the dinosaur because it actually does provide tremendous value in terms of productivity and optimizing your time and energy. And so, those are the initial steps I've taken so far. And I don't think it'll be very long before we have this sorted out. Yeah.
Yeah, I a couple of reflections. I mean, first of all, the idea of executive assistant maybe being an indulgence is if you think of it like Mad Men, where basically everyone's sort of getting their secretary to carry a message to somebody else's secretary, a bit like with pop stars, but get my people to speak to your people.
Yeah.
But maybe that's an exercise in vanity and kind of playing games. I would say though, and this sounds like an exercise in vanity and games, and maybe it is, but a necessary one. It's a positioning tool. Having somebody able to speak to you directly, or rather you reply to them, 4 months late with apologies, rather than speak to your assistant who will then set up a time for you, just comes across as more professional and puts a value on
Yeah.
your time to people that approach you. And although that's partly about appearance in your case, and I guess I would argue in my case that it's no longer about appearance, it's really actually necessary, because
Hmm.
otherwise we just can't
Hmm.
work in 20 hours a day. And so that's one thing. And about the recruitment process, just a few thoughts and responses. What I've actually found in practice is a couple of things. First of all, the best people have come from recommendations from other people, sometimes people they've used, or some people they've recruited but had kind of spare. Fellow e-commerce entrepreneurs actually had a referral from a
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
They actually use professional HR recruiter, and I think that can be useful. I think the best people to know, how to hire a virtual assistant, whether they're going to be an executive assistant, whatever else, in the Philippines are VAs in the Philippines, especially if they have a PA background. So
Yeah.
my best hires have been by Filipino lady herself, who was my original assistant, passed on by a client
Yep.
who'd hired through a professional process, and then she's recommended a couple of people since.
Yeah.
So
I
that's worked
totally
well.
totally agree with that. That's been our situation as well. So, that I probably should have mentioned that. My first step might be to ask the team if they
Mm,
know anybody. Yeah, because
yeah.
you're right. That has been the most productive way to find great team members. Yeah.
I mean, it's good to have a plan B, but I'd imagine, based on what
Yeah.
I've seen and what I've experienced personally and what I've seen with my friends, you're more likely to get somebody from that process, ideally. The other thing I would say is that what I did for the later recruitment is have the outgoing person in the role, Filipino lady, on the interview panel, and she pointed out some really great things that I would have missed. So I found that very, very helpful. So having existing Filipino team members on the panel, they know
Nice.
the nuances to
Yeah.
look for
Yep.
that you don't necessarily know in the Filipino culture, or the sort of work habits and stuff. So
Yep.
that was really helpful. Um, so that's the recruitment side. What about that small thing of onboarding people? Because obviously you get somebody, even if they're well qualified and experienced and bright and got a great work ethic and all the things we're looking for, they've still got to get their heads around, your 78,000 email inbox and everything else about your business life. So how are you planning to go about that?
Well, they might broach that subject carefully, not to scare them off and have
Yeah.
them immediately quit. Um, no, I think probably my hope is that hiring someone with good, solid experience will allow them to speak into the process a bit in terms of how best to approach the work. Sort of that who, not how. thing where I don't have to onboard them to something I haven't done before. They onboard me to something they've done before. And so I think there's some wisdom there. And then, the other reality is, I have a team leader in, the Philippines for the team there that does in essence handle the things like time off requests and 13th month and pay issues, all that kind of stuff. And so that would continue to be the case. They'd be a part of our team that's based in the Philippines. So that uh, you know team leader would be in essence the point person and would help with a lot of onboarding and orientation in terms of our corporate style and approach and all that. So that'll be helpful in that regard. And then beyond that, I guess I'll be learning as I go, tapping the wisdom of the crowd and asking, people like you and other people who I partner with, how best do you approach this topic and, pro tips, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, the only thing I would say is, and I'm not a person who's a great example of this because I've made this mistake, so I can feedback my mistake of going with a similar thought to you in that way. If you've got some people you can onboard them onto your sort of the business in general and the culture, that's going to really, really accelerate things. But nevertheless, I think going in hoping the VA is going to define the job, I've found personally anyway, not to have worked so well for me. And
Sure.
I've
Yeah.
gradually realized that it's my job to define
Sure.
the job. Now, it does depend who you hire and how organized your business is. Your business probably way more organized with your team leader in place than my activities have been. So in which case, it's easier for them to figure out what they should do. But my thought would be go and talk to these guys in your expensive mastermind. That's kind of the point of being in one, isn't it? To go and
Hmm.
tap them and just say, right, get a bit of a survey of what do you guys use your virtual assistant for? And I would differentiate also between, and this is kind of teaching my grandmother to suck heads, but it strikes me that the outcomes you want are not the same as the tasks you want them to do. And that's not the same as how they perform the tasks. I think if you get real goal clarity, then to some extent it will become obvious what tasks are really worth doing. And I agree with the inbox thing, no
Hmm. Hmm.
question.
Yeah.
But that it can be that you can artificially limit yourself by thinking in an overly granular way,
Yeah.
rather than saying, I want this outcome. And then in order to achieve that, what tasks do I need to
Yeah.
give them? And then go
No.
and talk to your executive friends and see what they're doing,
Yeah, too right on that. I think they even have resources, trainings and tips and that kind of thing already documented and well put together. I just haven't
Yeah,
tapped into them, but I think they're actually there
yeah.
inside the strategic coach community. Yeah.
I'd imagine they
So,
would be. I mean, I guess that's the
yeah.
kind of point of having something like that. Yeah. So I'd
Yeah.
imagine that starting with the sort of almost a cookie cutter template and then tweaking it to suit the outcomes you want, rather
Hmm.
than getting obsessed with
Hmm.
particular tasks, I think is a great idea. Because having not done it that way, I can tell you it's a bit messy. So there you go.
Yeah. All right, man. Great conversation today. Shall we put a bow on it and summarize here and then and wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to go over any of the other sort of activities that you think a VA could,
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
an executive assistant? Because I can see we've got a bit of a list here, which looks like good ones for
Yeah.
people listening.
I mean, I think if you search around, you'll see the top activities for executive assistants: managing the executive schedule, representing the executive when they can't be there. Now, that would be interesting. I don't know that that would be a situation in my case, but whatever. Preparing and just managing documents, data, that kind of thing. Dealing with confidential issues and situations, producing reports and presentations, really being and this is sort of old school, like, oh, can the boss do the PowerPoint presentations or not? That kind of stuff. I've no, this is like, okay, that's sort of ridiculous. Um, but somebody who could uh, polish up reports and kind of weed through them, data analysis, that kind of thing, and or keep something like a, a data studio or a dashboard
Hmm.
for the business updated might be an interesting angle. And then the things I mentioned aren't even on this list that I found, but the things like the inbox, the travel, details, and follow up with clients
Hmm.
and acknowledging people and that kind of thing. So there you have it. That's the list. Yeah.
By the way, I found producing presentations, like, trust me, because you know what I'm like. I've done presentations for your groups. I think I generally in the end do a good presentation, but it's normally last minute. And I've used my VAs more than once to help me, fill in presentations. I've basically gone to bed and said, right, I've got 40 blank slides. Please go on Pixabay, choose some suitable images.
Yeah. Yeah.
and upload them. So that can be, you know, presentations, things like that. Actually, I've
Sure.
found can be a great use of an assistant. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
one thing we haven't really dealt with is the whole thing of international versus local. We haven't really sort of
Mm.
delved into that. So is it worth talking about that? You mentioned the Philippines, so you made a decision that you want them to be international, not local, even though, you know,
Yeah.
possibly is that an affordability thing? Is it what's behind that?
You know, it's a great question. I think it's a situational at this moment. We have an office building that we're remodeling that we're not in yet, and I don't see us being in it soon. Once we're there, we'll hire local, receptionist slash assistant role, and we'll be back in the in sort of traditional office, kind of environment. But we're not there right now. It's all the whole team's virtual everywhere, and so the question is, if you're going to have virtual executive assistant, what benefit or value is there in them being local, or even in the United States? And so then it turns into sort of a question of cost and the availability of folks to work with. And the Philippines has a fantastic kind of a set of benefits there in terms of finding the right person. So that was sort of the logic. If we were in our building today, it might very well just be a local person who comes in to the office and works in sort of a traditional role. But we're just not there right now. So that was sort of the thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, I guess that you're going to get more of a spread of available people in the Philippines who are used to that kind of role. I mean, there are certainly,
Mhm.
obviously, in the UK or US, people are used to that kind of role, but you can certainly multiply the figure that you need to pay them by 5 or 6 times. And then the
Right.
job market's so tight in the US and UK right now.
Yep.
I don't know how it is in the Philippines. I haven't experienced that it's been particularly difficult to hire. But
No,
yeah.
and I think that's a key consideration. Obviously, the financial difference is striking.
Hmm.
I mean, if you look at onlinejobs.ph, you see that there are people who are ready, willing, and able to work 30 to 40 hours a week for, let's say, between $500 and $1,000 a month.
Yeah, sure.
And that is their stated wage that they're excited about. They put those numbers out there. That's not something that we're imposing on them. That's their stated wage that they're interested in earning. And for a lot of us who are international, we see that as just a incredible cost savings, and the competency level and quality of the work is fantastic.
Yeah.
With many, many people that we've worked with and work with right now, worked with in the past as well, from the Philippines. And so the question is, why would you not, go down that path? And there's really no reason not to, if you have super competent people and the wage scales make it much more affordable to you. There's a lot of wisdom there. It's really an internationalization of, it's globalization of work. And so then the question is it logical? Does it make sense? Is it ethical? All of those considerations go into it. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in thinking through that for cost saving issues, um, and the like. So there you have it. Yeah, that's my kind of sentiment on that.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I mean, the first of all, if as you've expressed, and this, I'm sure you're not going to be the only person out there feeling this, a slight sort of guilt or who am I to hire an executive assistant or some feeling like that. It's not hard to get, work that's worth more than $4 an hour if you're not doing something completely foolish like on
Mhm,
Facebook or something.
mhm,
So, that puts the barrier to how can I justify it? It really makes it a very low barrier to jump, doesn't it? Whereas if you're hiring somebody
mhm,
for $40 an hour or something, or 50, good executive assistants, quite expensive in the UK. I've had quotes for 30, £40 an hour, so 50,
mhm.
60. Then it's harder to justify, can I make, $100 an hour
Yeah,
worth? So,
a
that's the first
benefit
thing.
in essence. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and the other thing I've found, I have to say, I'm in London, which is a very international city, which ironically means we've got very full employment, even before the pandemic, sort of post-pandemic era. We'll see what happens next. But the quality of people that you can get to work in things, I've never really tried to hire in London, but the quality of service you get pretty much anywhere from British people can be pretty low. And that doesn't mean that the quality of service you get from really great British people isn't good, but you have to pay a lot of money for that. Whereas the
Yeah,
culture in the Philippines, they're geared to service and they
yeah,
understand American culture. So
that's
given that
interesting.
internet marketing is kind of Americanized anyway, it really helps. That from the very first hire, you have a good attitude and a willingness that I think is harder to find in
Mhm.
Britain. And I
Yeah.
don't know how it is in America. That's just different again.
No, and the labor market in the US is insanely challenging right now. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
sure.
many businesses who are struggling to find people to work at any price point almost. It's like, they just keep escalating the hourly rate because they're not finding people willing to jump in and do the work. And to the extent that that's a local job that requires, like being physically present in the location, then that's the constraint that business operator has to suffer through and sort out. For many of us, our businesses are virtual in anyway. We're just on Zoom and email and Skype and WhatsApp and whatever, virtual tools with our team members. So in essence, it removes that localness requirement and therefore makes the recruiting pool global. And there you have it. I mean, it's an opportunity for us to do well. And I tried for 3 or 4 5 years to work with folks in the Philippines and could never figure it out because it just did. I didn't recruit well. I didn't manage well. I didn't sort it well. And then finally, in 2017, really in essence hired a team because I bought a company. And that team was a team of rock stars, and they showed me the ropes, and they showed me how to work with people in the Philippines effectively. And that has made all the difference in my thinking about this. And so, that it's been very, very eye-opening and fun and interesting to learn how to work with a global team of people who are, high quality, high skill set, high talent folks who are ready, willing, and able to help you grow the biz. And it's just been an honor to do that and to work in that way since 2017. And so I'm looking forward to adding a team member in this regard, sort of in that form. Yeah.
Nice. Well, this is an exciting moment. I'm really glad that you feel, you're worth it, as L'Oreal will say. I'm sure you are, and I think you're going to find that after the teething troubles, that inbox alone, man, I'm worried now. 78,000 emails. There might be an offer
Please don't
for.
email me anything, Michael. It's really not helping if you email me.
I never do, which is why we communicate via Messenger. Now I get it. So
That's right.
yeah, but joking apart, I think that a lot of people are in that situation. And how can you even manage an inbox there? I mean, my inbox has got 40 emails in, and I'm worried about that. So, I guess that's definitely something you should do. And I think a lot of people listening
Yeah.
and watching should be really strongly considering it as well. So if you've inspired them to get over the hump, as it were, and actually do this, then that's a great thing. Do you want to
Yep.
just quickly summarize the points we've gone over today, your thoughts on the wisdom of having an executive assistant to defend your time?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you have it. The topic for the day is the wisdom of having an executive assistant to defend your time, help you organize your life, and increase productivity. The opportunity to do it is fairly straightforward and well worn, and even documented by organizations like Harvard Business Review. Will drop an article in the show notes. And the process by which you can do this, if you want to hire abroad, includes looking at sites like onlinejobs.ph. The roles and duties are pretty straightforward and have been tested and tried over the years by many people. And so you can create your own short list of activities. But I think it's something to look into, learning from the wisdom of other business executives and giving yourself the right or permission to work with a high quality, high caliber executive assistant, I think is potentially a next step for you if you're not doing that right now. I know that's the situation I'm in. So there you have it. That's the recap. Michael, as always, it's an honor to collaborate together. We're having a good time on Spotify lately in terms of listenership and subscribership. I noticed on Spotify, by the way, as we wrap up here, that there is now a ratings or a review function, and I think it didn't used to be there, or it's back on, or I don't know, but it is there. And if you're listening on Spotify, we would love to have you review the show and rate it. And you can do that by looking at the e-commerce leader show right at the top of the show. Underneath the badge, there's a little review tool. And then, of course, the Callin app is hopping for us. Our show on the Callin app airs every Tuesday, and we are the number 7 show in the education category, the number 15 show in the business category. And it's really just exciting to see that come together. So if you haven't checked out our episodes in the Callin app, we'd love to have you do that as well. Any final thoughts, Michael, before we wrap up?
That's great. I frankly had missed that Spotify was doing a rating now, so that's very exciting because we seem to be doing particularly well on Spotify. So yeah, it'd
Mhm.
be great if you can give us a bit of a love. We're giving you the best we can give you for free, and don't forget, Jason's a person that's earned goodness knows how much money, charged money through Udemy courses, books, and indeed one-to-one
I
and
do charge money.
University of Country. You do charge money, so we're getting it for free. So all we're asking for is stars. Really,
Yeah.
it'll take 30 seconds on an app, so that would be really fantastic. And yeah, the call-in show very exciting. We sort of jumped about 10x the number of people downloading and loading each show recently. So
Yeah.
yeah, come
Yeah.
and join that. Be on the cutting edge of an app when it's taking off, and experience that for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely right. If people aren't familiar with that and we they haven't heard us talk about it before, it is an app that runs on your phone, and it's basically a combo of podcasting and social, where you can have people join your shows, you can listen live, the whole nine yards. It's sort of an integration of a social media app and the podcasting app. So go check that out, and then look for the e-commerce leader call-in show. We do that with Chris Green, Kyle Hamer, and then Michael and I, and it's a fun fast format. Usually the episodes are 15 to 20 minutes, and we just give you our hot takes on specific e-commerce topics. And I really like it. It's really fun to get people's top perspective real fast, and we move on and go from there. So there you have it, Michael. As always, it's an honor. Appreciate the chance to hang out with you and learn from you. In this case, to pick your brain on how best to do this. You coached me today, and I really, really appreciate that. So thanks, man.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you as well. Lots and
Yep.
lots of learning.
Bye, everybody.